brand new material. You're the first audience to hear this. There are a lot of new slides. So please, if you could show me your grace. And hopefully I can articulate the message. I tried to come up with a more catchy title than just say the future of consumer robotics. I'm not a futurologist or anything like that. I don't have extensive experience in consumer robots. But I think hearing this term, the second half of the chessboard, kind of perhaps explains some of the bewilderment that I am kind of feeling in robotics in recent years. Okay? So just a little bit about myself, as Yi introduced. I am reinventing myself. After about 14 years at Drexel, my career started shortly after 9/11. I lived in New York City. That's where I did graduate school. That's where some of my family is. They were all impacted by 9/11, and we started to ask questions. How could we use robots to help with disaster response? And this set off a kind of career trajectory of this term which we call near-Earth UAVs. Essentially, we were trying to figure out how could we use robotic aircraft to be able to fly in and around buildings, through forests, down caves and tunnels. And then about 2007, the national academies started talking about how we really need to train tomorrow's students to have skills in international research and collaboration. And that's also a time when Thomas Friedman, which you might know from the New York Times, came out with his best-selling book, The World is Flat. Today, of course, the word globalization is in our vernacular, but back then it was still kind of emerging. When I started to ask myself, could I use humanoids as a case study to encourage, especially engineering students who are very reluctant to travel abroad, to maybe apply the best that the US has, which is in artificial intelligence and information technologies, with the best that Asia had, and happens being, I had relationships in Korea, in the electromechanical hardware design. So this is a very interesting kind of synergy between the two. Okay? And that kind of came to, a Apex where we had the DARPA Robotics Challenge. There was some speakers that talked about it. And, we were into this. We put in so much blood, sweat, and tears. And we failed to qualify for the finals. And, after a lot of reflections, what did I do for the last 18 months?
You're not the only one.
Just re-examining, well, what am I doing? It wasn't exactly a midlife crisis, but I was like, and then suddenly, around 2014, the state of Nevada had got designated by the FAA to do unmanned air vehicle testing. And that's when my colleagues at the university reached out to me and said, hey, could you help spearhead this effort? And so I would never have imagined that I would move to Las Vegas, having been born and raised in the Northeast. But I always knew that Nevada was probably front row and center in the whole UAS activity. And so we packed up our bags. And then, I get a call from DARPA shortly after I reached Las Vegas and say, hey, could you participate in the finals? And I told, Gil Pratt, well, I just got here, and the finals are like in 6 months. What do you expect me to do, right? Anyways, the university got behind all this. They provided the space. They did fundraising. And it was truly a Cinderella story. You might know that Professor Juno of the KAIST team is my cousin. We've been collaborating since 2007. And so not only were the two Hubos brothers in steel, we were the brothers in blood. So it was this really nice kind of story, and it was really nice for us. And then being in Las Vegas, of course, like, wow, that's great, we're so happy, and then we need you to do a tour. And so I had to go with Hubo to different things, with the governor, for example, and ribbon cutting of And Life is Beautiful is like the Las Vegas version of South by Southwest. And there were some artists, chefs, musicians. Okay, well, we'll have Hubo paint a mural. They were talking, oh, you know, DJs in Las Vegas get paid like $1 million a week. Can you do a robot DJ? And, we'll see what we can do. And it really was about this kind of community building. And then, there's so many conventions that come to Las Vegas. IBM asked us, oh, we have this 3D printed car, can you have people drive it? So my life was quite exhausting. Of course, you can see my publication record is kind of void, from 2015 to 2016. And, all of this was about, putting Las Vegas on the high-tech map, okay? And, these are just some of the articles that were saying, oh, fines reduction, possible hotel deal after robotics, they're really hoping, especially after Las Vegas's housing crisis, what can they do? They got to diversify the economy beyond simply gaming, okay? So, they came up with this, this is what drove me there. They're talking about unmanned air systems. Okay, that's what our high-tech, industry is going to be built on. Oh, the next thing, the Tesla Gigafactory, and we need to have more engineers know how to build like batteries and things. And then, we're going to have this center of advanced mobility. Oh, there's Hyperloop. We're going to, leverage Hyperloop between Las Vegas and LA. And then now it's about the smart cities, okay? All of these ideas were in the span of 12 months, okay? And it's like, some people in Las Vegas say we have ADD, okay? An attention deficiency disorder, where they're always chasing after the next big thing. And as a researcher, being invited to all these think group meetings, and it's just, again, the publication record speaks for itself. I have to produce it. It's like, take a moment of pause and say, okay, what do we need to actually put Vegas on the high-tech map? And I came up, with all these challenges. What is made in Nevada? We don't have the ecosystem. But I came up with this kind of really blue sky, crazy idea that, I'm calling Roboland. Okay? And, so, okay, what is that? And I said, notionally imagine it's something like a Smithsonian with, world-class, it's kind of a public interface. Yeah. With Epcot, which is this kind of experiential tomorrow's world concept, with all the fun and imagination of Universal Studios. Okay? So, this is kind of the ecosystem I imagine. You would have like the Iron Man store, so you could buy the newest exoskeleton or bionic prosthetics. You would have these esports and, these different types of experiences. And in the backdrop, of course, you have the world-class R&D center. Okay? So I said, we need to create, but everybody says, oh, Paul, you're not going to have a theme park. And I said, yeah, that's right. I'm not trying to create a theme park. I'm trying to create an ecosystem. What is an ecosystem? This was what, from Yiming Zheng's slides. He's talking about what's happening in Shenzhen, okay? And the World Robotics Forum that was held in Beijing kicked off a couple of years ago. There was very open calls. Let the world's roboticists come to Shenzhen with, just an idea, and we will help you turn it into a product. And they have that supply chain. There's a joke where you can actually walk into Shenzhen with a concept for a smartphone, and at the end of the day, you have all the components needed to make it. Okay? So I would like to have that kind of concept in Las Vegas. Okay, with all these people coming in for all different types of trade shows, say, hey, I kind of need this widget. They can walk in and they have that ecosystem. So at least that's the blue sky, kind of crazy idea. Okay? Well, the fact of the matter is there is a domain expertise in Las Vegas, and it's centered around these three things. Okay? Clearly, if you've been to Las Vegas, where you could go to Egypt, Paris, Venice, and the Colosseum all in one day, even within 1 hour, you were immersed in these environments. So they know how to build things to scale. Okay? The other thing is that the trade shows, for example, the Consumer Electronics Show brings in over 170,000 people a year, over 3,000 exhibitors. The world's media is there to see the launches of different products. There's over 40 million visitors a year. Believe it or not, the hotels at any day are 90% occupied. And of course, we have all these celebrity chefs and shows. Okay? So I said, maybe this ecosystem has to revolve around consumers. After all, it seems that Las Vegas, with all these type of things, it's about a service sector, okay, and consumers. And I said, hey, I'd like to see if Roboland could be this nexus of consumer robots. So I said to her, what is a consumer robot? Because I think I kind of know what it is, but well, what does it mean? You know, and I said, well, there's the Consumer Electronics Society that IEEE has, okay? And their kind of mission statement here is the advancements of theory and practice. This sounds just like what the Robotics and Automation Society says, okay? So you can replace the word electronic with robot and it will still work. Notice that it was founded in 1983 and RAS was founded just a year after that. They also have their magazine, just like RAS does. And yeah, we use the same type of language about making lives safer and easier. I think the main distinction comes in this red color where we said it's mass market, okay? It's not just about mass consumption, but if you think about driverless cars, it's about mass integration as well. That needs to also be about safety and ease and things like that. So no surprise, you're finding that more and more robotics and robot-related technology like vision and things like that are finding their home in these publications. And this is something that also the Robotics and Automation Society is a little bit concerned of. It's like a turf war when you talk about these publications. Okay, so, you know, hopefully the students might recognize this. Okay? This was very iconic in my generation. Yes, it is the 1979 Sony Walkman. And I think, if I think back, I think that's what launched consumer electronics. Okay? So I said, okay, what's the robotic equivalent of the Walkman? You know, the student generation, they'll talk to their students years later. Oh yeah, they had something like this, okay? So it's like, it's the Roomba. There are a lot of different robot vacuum cleaners out there, but everybody talks about the Roomba one, okay? And it's already, at this point, 10 million have been sold, okay? Oh, this thing, you know, it's the MakerBot. I mean, there's so many different 3D printers out there, but this seems to be the Walkman equivalent of that. It's really manufacturing for the masses. And then, of course, there's the DJI Phantom, which secures 70% of the market. There's so many different types of these rotorcraft out there, but everybody just wants the DJI. Okay, that's the Walkman. Okay. So the one thing I think you'll agree with is that the lines between what's a consumer electronic and a consumer robot is blurry, and it's getting blurrier. Okay? And if you think about what is kind of robot technologies and how they're integrating more and more into our research and our publications, the topics in red kind of speak to why there's this blurriness between what's a consumer electronic and a consumer robot. Okay? So I start to ask myself, if I'm trying to kind of think about what a consumer robot is and what does that mean academically, what are these technologies and what is the science that's going to enable the Walkman of robotics? So, you know, I'm doing a lot of like retrospect and thinking about what's going on, and I've heard of this term by, you know, startups and things. They talk about the hockey stick. Okay, and essentially you have this period where things seem to be somewhat static, and there's an inflection point, and there's this exponential growth. Okay, and we kind of see this in quad rotors. where, basically DJI, started launching around 2009, and right now, they have over like $1 billion in sales. Okay? So what happened, right? I said to myself, what happened, in this period of time? Okay? And again, because I was a forcing function of creating this talk, I just kind of went back, a flashback into stuff that we did. So, in 2002, again, disaster response. I'm looking at flying indoors. There were talks about perch and stare for situational awareness. We need to focus on collision avoidance, so we started working with optic flow. I wanted to be able to create this kind of versatile aircraft. They didn't want any more UAVs, so I was thinking, how can we value add conventional fixed wing aircraft to turn into helicopters? This was also about landing zone ID, whether it is fog, smoke, blowing sand. They were talks about hybrid vehicles. So here we're looking at transporting unmanned ground vehicles. Now they call it the last mile problem. But we're just thinking about how could you use robots in combination. This is another one, just having a driverless vehicle take an unmanned helicopter. And this is just the business of activity. And then in 2008, we started thinking about how could you add robotic limbs to UAVs. Okay, so I said this all happened in the flat part. Okay, and I go, yeah, and that's of course not me. No, not just me. A lot of us in our UAV community have been doing things similar. We were driven by these silver bullet questions, about collision avoidance, better sensors, LiPo batteries became more prolific, carbon fiber, all these type of things were creating, I think, leading to this area, okay? And academically, it's great for the 3 Ps. Proposals, publish, PhD. Okay? Very, very good. Okay? Now, when I look back at, DJI, Yimin Jing, he's a fellow of IEEE and, he's a pioneer in robotics. And I look at what he published in this area, okay, leading to DJI, it was all about, I call it YACL, okay? YACL, yet another controller, okay? And I was a little dismissive of, oh, okay, that's an adaptive control, okay, add this term, What I did not appreciate is what DJI's focus in control of was to make a quad rotor that anybody could fly safely. And they meticulously put effort and control laws, testing just to do that. In terms of publishing, it's just a simple adaptive controller. I mean, we've done this like 20 years ago, okay? But it's this kind of relentless persistence in it. I asked Yiming, how many control people do you have at DJI's department? Okay. They said we have 70 PhDs working in control. What? Okay, exactly. Okay, larger than any university's control system faculty. Again, it was all about making the quad rotor almost idiot-proof on the fly. Okay? So I kind of joke. I say, the things that I work on become presents under Christmas trees. This was kind of like what I was doing when I was doing my PhD, and my first PhD student. We were looking at adding robot technologies and computer vision, the camera systems, and then you have these companies that are doing really well with similar types of ideas. Okay, these were the UAVs we were working on, slapping them together, publishing, and then 2010 Parrot drone, you can get this for like about $200. It's in your Christmas tree. Mini Hubo, it cost us, we wanted to have a kind of a smaller scale research platform that, researchers could have for under $10,000. And then, 2014, there's this $500 mini DART. Okay, so It's like things that I do become Christmas tree presents in the less time it takes for a PhD student to graduate. Okay, so I started to think, okay, am I just setting up, am I sacrificing PhD student after PhD student to just go and make things for the Christmas tree? That's when I started to come across terms called technology adoption rates. Okay, and this graph just basically is, okay, how many years did it take for people to get the telephone or like the TV? Okay, and you can see that it's just getting, and it used to be people, oh, that will be adopted like in 100 years from now. And I said, no, not 11 years, but it's binary. So I said, it's actually 7 years. Okay, so the computer engineer scientists understand this joke. Okay, okay, so I think it's 111 binary, which means it takes about 7 years, and if the average PhD student is around a rough 5.5, 6 years, I gotta make sure they have a dissertation topic that gets them ahead of a curve. Okay? And if you look at just some of the other things that we're seeing, you know, these were what was happening in academically or research pursuits. And then you just see that, you know, not too far later, that you're seeing these things either commercialized. Okay? And all of us that were doing the DARPA Robotics Challenge, we have to start to ask ourselves, what's going to happen in 2022? Okay? So I'm saying that robots and adoption rates, in my humble observation, is taking less than 10 years. Okay? And if you go to this website, you can kind of see, it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing. It's called the Extinction Timeline. And they say, oh, by the year 2014, getting lost will be extinct. And it's kind of true. I mean, if you have a smartphone, that's kind of true. And then, they said libraries, now sadly, that's going to be extinct, internal combustion cars. And then this is the one that's kind of always funny, 2050, ugliness and death will be extinct. Okay? It's all over here, physical pain and ugly. Okay? But then, I show the crazy things that we're seeing. I mean, Avatar was one of the highest grossing movies of all time. And even DARPA is doing these kind of like brain machine interfaces. Is it really that crazy? And another phenomenon I'm seeing with the 7 years thing is, the generation gap. Okay? So it's funny, I asked, my students, typically grad students, hey, you got a generation gap with the freshmen, and they kind of laugh at me. What do you mean? And you go, well, hey, what's your favorite search engine? And they just look at me kind of like, yeah, Google. So, yeah, that's not what the freshmen are using. And they go, what? Yeah, they like YouTube. Okay, YouTube is on their homepage, and that's what they search with. Okay, it's interesting. They rather just watch the video than read stuff. Okay, so I'm saying that these rapid adoption rates and things is it's not just a biological generational gap. It's a technological one. Okay, so it gets back to this term, the second half of the chessboard. It's this kind of folklore. I don't know how factual it is, but essentially, the emperor wanted to reward the inventor of chess. And, the inventor of chess apparently is a mathematician, and he humbly says, well, I need rice to feed my family. And the emperor says, oh, of course, we'll do that. And the idea was you would just put 1 grain of rice in the first square, then double it for the second square, double that on the third square, etc. Okay, and you could kind of see this, binomial exponential, that by the time you get to square 16, that's a lot of rice. Okay, as depicted here. Okay, and by halftime, okay, 32, you got like 2 billion grains of rice. Okay, so in other words, Kurzweil kind of used this term, the second half of the chessboard, as well as this intersection of Moore's law of how processor speeds and capabilities are also doubling after every 18 months. That you're getting into this kind of thing called the age of acceleration. Okay, So this is what I'm kind of seeing right now. I think it's connected, that with all this computation, all these grains of rice, so to speak, that you're seeing, things that are a little bit hard to either predict or to kind of conceptualize. I mean, it's hard to conceptualize 2 billion grains of rice. So clearly, we call this the zettabyte phase, equivalent to 250 billion DVDs of information, that you're having this erosion of boundaries. What's the difference between a product and a service, producers and users, okay, between IT and media. Things are changing. I would say even in academia is also changing. Is it pure research? Is it workforce development? So it's just kind of this blurriness that seems to happen. Okay? So even the iconic Apple company. I mean, right now, they're the largest retailer of music. Okay, they're a bank, and there's talk about being a car company as well. Okay, Amazon. I just thought of them as the book company. Oh no, they're a Hollywood studio. Okay, you hear the Golden Globes, and they keep on, and the Oscars, they keep on winning. They're a cloud computing company. I mean, they seem to come out of nowhere to take turf away from IBM and HP, and development of these drone delivery systems and these kind of supermarkets. Again, this kind of erosion of the boundary seems to be happening. I think you're going to see more and more of this in this age of acceleration. Okay? So this is why I wanted to say to myself, okay, what is a consumer robot? Okay? Well, yeah, clearly people will list this one, but I would say a drone or driverless car, an exoskeleton VR, and even a 3D printer are examples of consumer robots. Okay? And so to overlap with the Consumer Electronics Show, thanks to sponsorship from the Robotics and Automation Society, we hosted this winter school to learn more. Okay? And my hypothesis was that I think the hotels, because of their domain expertise, they could be a test bed for consumer robots. 40 million people, the global diversity of the demographic and profile, maybe that would be a good idea. And it's not so surprising that shortly after, Wynn Hotel actually talked about putting Amazon Echo in over 4,000 rooms in their hotel. Okay? So there's this idea, really, maybe we could take some of these technologies, test it out in the hotel domain. Okay? So I brought speakers who are basically from UNLV's top-ranked hotel school. They're talking about hotel innovation and things of that nature, as well as different C-level suite speakers from the major hotels. And I brought some roboticists. Professor Howard also was there to help me with this winter school. And Savio, Steve Cousins, some of you know, from Ross, Willow Garage, etc., was talking about his hotel delivery robots. And of course, because it was CES, I could pull people from Samsung and Qualcomm to also come and talk about what's going on. Okay? And to kind of all bring it together, we had this hackathon, and basically you had a box of toys, and the problem was, how do you address pain points that are in the hotel? Okay, so moving to Las Vegas, before I was just a consumer of a hotel. I just want the room, great. Okay, that's it. But I didn't realize that there's so much more. There's basically 5 pillars inside the hotel, okay? The first one, essentially, I deal with is just, I check in. Sometimes I ask housekeeping to bring me, I don't know, an iron. But yeah, that's only one of the 5, okay? And these are just 3 example pain points that they're having, okay? The pain point with guest engagement, of course, is, for example, multilingual services. Food and beverage, okay, is also a very big challenge, especially in Las Vegas. We might think that our ICRA and IROS conferences are large. No, actually Vegas Hotels thinks that's a small conference. But imagine their receptions and their banquets about the type of food and the numbers that they're dealing with. I told you that hotel rooms in Las Vegas are about 90% capacity. A real pain point right now is that there are more theater seats than hotel rooms. They're running around 50%, okay? In other words, a lot of the Vegas shows, like Cirque du Soleil, are hitting their expiration date. Okay, Cirque du Soleil is already 20 years old in Las Vegas. So this is a big issue. They spent so much money to create these huge theaters. They're only used in the evening. Hence, there's this excess capacity that they don't know what to deal with. Gaming, they're seeing that clearly the millennials don't care about slot machines, but they care about esports. So Vegas is trying to figure out how do you monetize this, as well as retail. There are a lot of shops within these large casinos. Okay. Okay, so bottom line is after a week of the winter school, the talks were very well received. It was a real nice exchange between the hotel execs and roboticists. And these were just some of the things. This is what Steve Cousins talked about in guest delivery. Samsung talking about smartwatches. And this is kind of an outcome of one of the hackathon participants where they were trying to create this kind of VR Pac-Man in physical world type of thing. Kind of like the Budweiser Super Bowl commercial, real world Pac-Man. Okay, so I'm still not 100% sure if RAS should have a technical committee on consumer robotics, but I'm trying to gather more information. So therefore, I got involved with a startup company just to specifically focus on casinos and hotels, since we're robotics. Okay. And the pain point we learned about is in housekeeping. GRAs is the firm that they use. It's called guest room attendant. We did our due diligence. We are talking extensively with the unions and the head of the unions being part of our team. This is a real technology pull that we're seeing. A lot of times it's about resource allocation for these carts. You might see them in a hotel, they're loaded with towels and coffee and other things like that. And it's all about how do you localize your assets. And even sadly more, it's about the situational awareness. By law, you cannot have cameras in the hotel rooms, nor on the GRA for privacy issues, but there's quite an issue about GRAs being attacked in rooms while they're cleaning them. So again, could we equip these type of carts, make them smarter with cameras to be able to monitor potential attacks and things? Okay. So anyways, I was trying to kind of pull this together. IROS 2020 was awarded to Las Vegas to host. So I have roughly 3 years to prepare. I would not be surprised with current projections that we could hit 5,000 people coming to Las Vegas for the conference. And so there are a lot of ways we could leverage the Vegas resources to accommodate conferences of that size. Okay? But the one thing that society always asks is what innovations are you going to introduce into the conference? Okay? And so I wanted to not call it the DARPA Robotics Challenge, but I'm going to call it the Hotel Robotics Challenge. Okay? I can't get DARPA, DARPA had like $80 million. I can't get $80 million from the hotels, but I think I can get $8 million. Okay? So if I did that, could we have requests for proposals to address challenges that are in the hotels, award that money early on to multiple teams so that they can come to Las Vegas during IROS together? Okay. So, for example, one notional hotel challenge I'm thinking is in guest engagement. And the idea is how can we get our colleagues who are focusing on human-computer interaction as well as natural language processing to maybe address some of these pain points that the hotel has. Okay? Identified stakeholders. Every hotel on the strip would want this type of technology, and we could actually provide some sort of equipment potentially. Okay? The second one, of course, is entertainment. Instead of America's Got Talent, I call it IROS Got Talent. Okay? You might have seen this video by Cirque du Soleil. It has drones flying. Okay? This is when you have artists, performers come together. They do amazing showcases of technology. Again, because we have underutilized stage sets in theaters, how could we leverage that to maybe have some type of entertainment? Okay? Again, there could be furnished equipment for that. I could definitely see Cirque du Soleil creating an RFP towards this, maybe to get a lot of our UAV drone swarms, flying drones, maybe to do some sort of show. Okay? The next one, food and beverage. My two teenage daughters love this show, Cake Boss. Okay, here every week he has to build a cake. It's like customized cakes. But I'm wondering what can 3D technology do to maybe create very interesting cakes? So maybe that's the type of challenge. Okay, these are definitely the restaurants in the Venetian that might enjoy that. People might actually enjoy watching this, customized cake being made near real time. So, these are just some of the equipment that we could use. Esports, we're seeing things like drone racing. DARPA had its cyber challenge in Las Vegas. We had a driverless racing. This was a quadriplegic, could not drive. They actually had that showcasing in Vegas. So again, could we create some sort of entertainment using different types of robot technologies? Okay. So, in just kind of in parting words, I like to say that we have this line between consumer electronics and consumer robots, which is growing to be very blurry. There's this hockey stick graph that as roboticists, as students in robotics, what happens if you start to be a little bit mindful about mass adoption or mass consumption? Okay? Especially when I talk to you about this age of acceleration, second half of the chessboard. Okay? I'm also saying that you've got to be cognizant of the adoption rate in less than 10 years. I came to this term talking to my colleagues in computer graphics and game developers. They never designed the game for the current PC power. They're always thinking about PC power that's going to happen 5 years from now. Okay? So that by the time the game is released, the latest computer is just enough to be able to run the game. Okay? So they're always trying to be ahead of the curve. I think as roboticists, we would be mindful to think like that. And finally, I am trying to create this ecosystem and talking to those in Vegas as well as the state government in Nevada, what it means to create a nexus of consumer robots. And I think this kind of pictograph kind of shows what I mean, why it's so important. Unlike my old home of Philadelphia, where you could see a Boeing plant, Lockheed Martin, you could see Merck, Exxon, and say, oh, they work there. Yeah, my neighbor down the street works there, they're an engineer. In Las Vegas, the youth, the only billboards they see are about entertainment, about a DJ that makes $1 million a week, their uncles, their valet parking. They don't really have a concept of other types of jobs. And so this is why I think it's important to really engage from the grassroots. And this is why I had this little contest with these middle school students when we went out there and said, okay, show us what you dream RoboLand would be like. And this is their depiction of robots, the exhibits they would see. So why am I doing this? It is about helping put Nevada, Las Vegas on the map. but also it's really to build our future. With that, I'd like to thank all my sponsors and teammates over the years. Thank you very much.
So let's open the floor for the questions. Are there any questions?
So do you think that we should all just start working on yet another control law to, I mean, you know, in terms of as students looking to find a topic to work on, do you think it's a good idea to just look for something that maybe has been proven in academia, but by improving it, we can move it into the mass market? Or do you think it's better to do kind of the far-reaching, aim for whole new topics that we don't have the proving grounds for yet?
Oh, okay, so the question is, should we be persistent in maybe perfecting a certain technology versus maybe coming up with a real vertical advance in something?
Right, and in academia, or do we leave that to the 70 control engineers that you could have?
Right. That's a very good question. I think it's something that, you know, you have to individually answer. You know, my career was built, you know, doing the latter. Because you have to write proposals, and people are always thinking, oh, is this just an incremental change, or is this transformative? Yeah. And I would not, you know, change that if I had to do things all over again. But like, it was very good for the 3 Ps. But if it's about, hey, I want to be the next DJI, to understand, hey, does it matter just doing the proof of concept, which a lot of the things were for us, or is it about perfection? What will it make to really have everybody use the platform? And it's more the latter. Hopefully, it's yes. Thank you.
So in the latter part, you said that the jobs that they see now are the typical jobs in Las Vegas. And I wonder what their perception is of robots entering that work field. Like you said, the hotels would be interested in this, but are they supporting?
So the question is about how well received in Las Vegas is this robot invasion. And I think, especially with Alan Manning's talk this morning, it is very interesting. The hotels know that this technology is coming. They know it's unquestionable. So what they are asking themselves is, how do we get ahead of this? Okay. The hotels in Vegas are actually very slow adopters. It's not because they don't have any money. Right? They clearly have the money, but they want to make sure that they know what the return on investment is. And this is why the company that I'm working with, you know, it is with a lot of the hotel executives. So to answer your question, I think for those that are doing the dull, dirty, you know, dangerous jobs, they see this robot technology as actually augmenting their performance. So that's good. But there are Luddites in every sector, and there are Luddites, of course, in Las Vegas. But they also know it's about their next generation. They know that this is why, especially at UNLV, I have very non-traditional students. I have students who are in their 30s taking, you know, introductory to dynamics. It's because they spent most of their 20s doing very well, making money on the strip, valet parking. But they realize in their 30s, I can't do this for the rest of my life. So they return back to the university, studying engineering. And they don't want their children to kind of repeat that. Some people call Las Vegas kind of the last coal mine in the United States. This idea, hey, I don't need higher education. I'm just going to work on the strip. But this last economic bubble kind of really shook up the, you know, the DNA of Las Vegas. So.
One question: do you think it's existential robotics for entertainment in these dimensions? Is it like if Las Vegas doesn't adopt technologies, then it might be extinct versus Macau or versus Korean theme parks, or is a zero-sum game, or is take that time?
I'm very cautious to make kind of predictions, especially when I think things happen in a 7-year time frame. I think now is the good time to do that. as I was sharing with you, California is very saturated, very expensive, relatively easy for those in Northern California to move to Reno to do, you know, remote work if need be, and those in Southern California moving to Las Vegas, right? The other benefit is that in making this kind of Shenzhen-like ecosystem, maybe your sector, you're there for a trade show, okay? Maybe, you know, you sell vacuum cleaners and there's the vacuum cleaner trade show. And you say, oh, I heard about this robot, you know, Roboland thing. Let me just check it out. And you see, hey, they have this like $200 LiDAR system that just maps up the room. That you start to say to your product engineer, have you heard about this LiDAR system? So, you know, it begins dialogue because there's just so many opportunities to have a collision.
So that ecosystem, is it that you, in Shenzhen, I've been there some time, and you can walk to the next company. It's the same as Silicon Valley was in the 1990s. You go to the next company and get out with the robot in your hands, right? Is that what you have in mind, that you can go to the next company and come up with a LiDAR or a touch sensor or an AI system or something?
That's the general idea, but again, this is kind of blue sky me. You know, in the ivory tower of academia, I could think esoteric thoughts, but the reality is Las Vegas is kind of going through this identity crisis.
Are there any questions? Okay, since we're late, so yeah, let's thank Professor O here.